Coco Gauff makes promise on social media after USA lose at the United Cup. Coco Gauff's preparation for the Australian Open is over, as the USA are out of the United Cup. It marked a solid run from the 21-year-old and her compatriots, but ultimately they did not have enough to topple a strong Poland outfit. That was, despite Coco Gauff claiming her fourth straight win over Iga Swiatek, having given her country a glimmer of hope with a superb singles victory. Regardless of the outcome of this tournament for the USA, it marked a fine return to action for the two-time Grand Slam champion as she now heads to Melbourne. This will mark the first real test of her 2026 season, to see how her new techniques can hold up under the scrutiny of a Grand Slam tournament. Coco Gauff responds after the USA lost at the United Cup. Taking to X immediately after the team's defeat, Gauff made a claim that suggested she was unwilling to brush this tournament aside swiftly. After all, the USA had failed to defend their title from 2025, and for her, that will sting. As such, she made a promise, writing, "Gave it my all today, thank you for the support. Always an honor to compete in this event and for a team. We'll do better next time. #Team USA." Gauff's win over Swiatek marked a huge one for the American, seeking some justification for all the work she has put in over the off-season. It will be interesting to see if that kind of form and ability to overcome the world's best players continues on the biggest stage. How Coco Gauff is turning around her head-to-head versus Iga Swiatek. Gauff has been around on tour for what feels like forever, given her youth. However, she has not been the elite-level star she is today that entire time. Instead, the youngster was forced to fight through early career struggles, particularly against the world's very best, resulting in some rather skewed head-to-head records. Gauff's loss to Swiatek marks a perfect example of this, having lost her first 11 matches against the Polish superstar. Fortunately, she is starting to flip the script, having won their last 4 encounters and the last 8 sets in a row. Their head-to-head now stands at 11-4 in favor of Swiatek, but recent form indicates that gap will continue closing as the years go by. A promise in the aftermath. The lights of the stadium had dimmed, but the glow of phones had not. Somewhere between the locker room and the long walk back to the hotel, Coco Gauff scrolled through the familiar tide of messages, flags, broken hearts, encouragement wrapped in emojis, disappointment softened by belief. The United Cup had slipped away from Team USA, not with a dramatic shatter but with a quiet finality that lingered in the air like the last note of a song played too softly. Loss has a way of arriving uninvited. It sits beside you even when you don't ask it to, tapping its fingers on the table, replaying moments you wish you could rewind. For Coco, it wasn't about one forehand that sailed long or a return that kissed the tape the wrong way. It was about the collective weight of representing a country, of knowing millions had watched, hoped, and trusted. She had learned early that tennis is a lonely sport disguised as a team game when the flags come out. You train alone, hurt alone, doubt alone. But when the anthem plays, you carry more than your own name. You carry stories, expectations, history. Coco set her phone down for a moment and breathed. At 19, she had already lived several tennis lifetimes. She'd been called the future, the present, the answer. She'd learned how praise could lift you and how criticism could sharpen its teeth when things didn't go to plan. Tonight, though, wasn't about noise. It was about responsibility. She picked the phone back up. Social media had become a modern-day town square, loud, relentless, intimate. Coco had used it to celebrate wins, to speak about causes bigger than forehands and backhands, to show pieces of herself beyond the baseline. Tonight it would be something else. Her thumbs hovered. What do you say when your country falls short? When you feel you've fallen short too? She thought of the kids who had stayed up late watching, gripping rackets in their living rooms, imagining themselves on that court. She thought of her parents, who had driven her to practice before dawn, who taught her that character mattered as much as trophies. She thought of her teammates, sharing quiet nods in the hallway, bonded by disappointment but also by belief. Then she typed, "This one hurts. We wanted it so bad for Team USA. Thank you to everyone who supported us. Your belief doesn't go unnoticed. I promise to learn from this, work harder, and come back stronger. This isn't the end of our story." She read it twice. No excuses. No deflection. Just a promise. She hit post. Within seconds, the message began to ripple outward. Likes, replies, retweets, digital applause mixed with digital arms around her shoulders. Some fans wrote, "We're proud of you." Others said, "Keep going." A few reminded her that greatness is built in moments like these, when the scoreboard doesn't cooperate. But promises on social media are strange things. They aren't binding in ink, yet they linger. They sit in screenshots and memories. They follow you onto the practice court at sunrise, into the gym when your legs ache, into the quiet moments when doubt tries to negotiate. The next morning, the world moved on, as it always does. Headlines shifted. New matches, new debates, new heroes and villains. But Coco's promise stayed where promises always live, inside the work. On the practice court days later, there were no cameras, no hashtags. Just the thud of the ball, the scrape of shoes, the rhythm of repetition. Each drill was a sentence in a longer response to that loss. Each sprint was punctuation. She thought about what the United Cup represented. Not just a trophy, but a reminder that tennis, for all its individuality, can become something shared. She wanted to honor that. To be the kind of player who didn't disappear after setbacks, who didn't treat loss as a full stop. The promise became less about redemption and more about evolution. Coco knew she couldn't control outcomes. She couldn't guarantee titles or perfect performances. But she could control her preparation, her attitude, her willingness to grow. She could control how she responded when the weight felt heavy. And somewhere, fans noticed. Not just in the wins that followed, but in the way she spoke after losses, the way she credited her team, the way she carried herself with both fire and humility. The promise wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was steady. Months later, when she walked onto another court, another tournament, another moment heavy with expectation, the memory of that United Cup lingered, not as a wound, but as a compass. A reminder of why she played, of who she played for, of the responsibility she embraced rather than avoided. In a world obsessed with instant reactions, Coco Gauff had chosen something quieter: accountability. The United Cup loss would remain a line in the record books. But the promise, typed late at night, fueled by disappointment and belief, became part of her larger narrative. Not the story of a loss, but the story of a young athlete learning how to turn heartbreak into forward motion. And as the ball rose for the next serve, she carried it with her, not as pressure, but as purpose.